Reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. And as I've already alluded to, this is Jesus cleansing 10 men with skin disease. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 men with a skin disease approached him, keeping their distance. They called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? So where are the other 9? Do none of them return to give glory to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Our reading for today reinforces two reoccurring themes in Luke. The first theme is that Jesus cares deeply about those who are outcast and oppressed. We see Jesus repeatedly taking special interest in those cast out of the normal society and often judged by society in some way to be inferior. We see Jesus who can love us in spite of who we are, all of us. The second theme has to do with who recognizes him as a healer and prophet, an extraordinary person. In Luke's recollection in his writing, persons who are marginalized and deemed underclass seem well placed to see Jesus for who he really is, in particular, those possessed with demons. And in return, he sees them for who they really are and how they are at their very core, at their very heart. Through him, we can recognize the divine amid the suffering, see distress just like we see God's action in redemption, restoration, and exhortation. Luke tells us not about just an individual, but a whole community on the margins. These people with their skin disease we might call leprosy. To help us appreciate conditions for the communities on the margin, Nancy Lynn Westfield tells about a tiny town of Bergen, about 2 hours from Jerusalem, with just 7,000 residents and only about 60 or so that are Christian. It is not a popular stop for pilgrims and tourists, but a friend of hers, who served as a mission co-worker in the region, always tries to take groups to the town when he visits. He wants them to see the place where it is believed that Jesus healed 10 people with leprosy. Now, a church currently sits on the official site of the healing in Bergen. It's one of the oldest Christian churches in existence. In Jesus' time, leprosy had no reliable cure. People with leprosy were seen as unclean, carrying a large negative stigma. Many believed that the condition was a punishment for sin. Lepers were feared and shunned. Sometimes they were lucky to be pitied, yet despised if they were not at all. The site at Bergen includes an abandoned Roman cistern that, according to the locals, housed those with leprosy. A hole in the top of the cistern, intended for collection of rainwater, became the place where people would pass food and water to the people inside. Now, the Holy Land is dotted with sites like this. Legend doesn't always match up with the reality of our scriptural tales, but still, for us, it presents a bracing image for such an existence. To imagine living in an isolated life in an underground stone cave. This cave would have been where they ate, where they slept, where they resided together, a ragtag family of outcasts, waiting for what? A cure, a miracle, waiting perhaps for their misery to end one way or another. Whatever they're waiting for, it is Jesus who walks by, walking with his disciples in this unsafe borderlands between Samaria and Galilee, a no man's land of social and religious boundaries. Walking a path other Jews would have walked extra miles to avoid. You must ask yourself one question: how do these beggars know to call out to him, to call him Lord and Master and beg for his mercy? Had the news about Jesus somehow filtered down into that stone cavern? Did they sense something about Jesus' presence or some kind of Son of Godness that hangs around him like a cloud of grace? Or perhaps, most heartbreakingly to think about, to contemplate, they begged for mercy from anyone who might walk by, only to be ignored. He is just one more to try. But Jesus hears their cries. He does not heal them straight away. He tells them to go to the priest. They are the ones who declare the people clean or unclean. On the way, they are made clean, restored from their horrific condition that has plagued them for God knows how long. Jesus doesn't heal them first and then direct them to the priest. The gospel says, as they went, they were made clean. The sending comes first, followed by the healing. Only after they commit to the journey. Imagine the decision to emerge from that dark cave, blinking in the bright desert sunshine beating down on their weakened and damaged skin. But setting out anyway, simply because they trust the Lord of love who tells them to go. It's an astonishing act of faith to take those first steps. Then one man turns back to express his thanks. Jesus clearly singles out this Samaritan as worthy of praise, notably since the Samaritans were the enemies of Israel. Jesus asks, maybe rhetorically, where are the others? As it is sometimes characterized, I do not think it was meant to shame those other 9 who didn't interrupt their trip to the priest. I do not hear Jesus question harshly. After all, he was the one who sent them to go to the priest. I do hear sadness in what Jesus says. Where are the 9? Jesus asked. Not because he expected their expressions of gratitude, because they're missing out. They're missing out on this expression of spontaneous joy from a foreigner. This person, detested by the community, has something to teach them. The 9 are so quick to hightail it to the church that they miss the fact that church is happening right there on the road, out in the open, in front of God and everybody. The radical message of this story is not only that Jesus is a merciful person and a healer. We know that. The radical message is that Jesus says that the difference is to be honored. By having deliberately identified the healed, this man, a foreigner, Jesus is saying that the difference is not to be ignored, but respected. The picture emerges. Luke sees in Jesus that faith has the power to heal and save, but neither faith nor healing is limited by borders, whether those be boundaries or geography, religion, social, or combinations of those, or something else. Jesus answers the questions: who may have faith? With anyone. Who can act in faith? Anyone. Who can acknowledge Jesus' identity as God's agent? Anyone. We can receive healing, receive salvation. Anyone can, anywhere, from any background. This is the Lukean picture of Jesus that continues to surprise. Luke's account in this story and elsewhere is provocative. Jesus' actions may scandalize those who are interested in guarding those social or religious boundaries. Nevertheless, Jesus acts with mercy towards outsiders, lauds their faith, eats at their varying tables, and crosses a variety of boundaries. He is a living parable of the realm of God. So it is worth leaning into Luke's literary design to ask, how does this narrative and Luke's gospel as a whole help communities of faith like ours think about and act in relation to those who might be seen as outside the household of faith? Again, the radical part of the message of this story is not that Jesus is a merciful person and healer. We know that. The radical part of this message is that Jesus says the difference is to be honored. By having deliberately placed himself in a borderland, having deliberately identified and healed this man as a foreigner, Jesus is saying that the difference is not to be ignored, but respected. This naming cuts across any impulse by us today. It tells us that being a Samaritan does not matter to Jesus. On the contrary, Jesus identifies the Samaritan as a foreigner to make the point that it was a foreigner who recognized him, asked for mercy, was healed, and now returns to worship and give thanks. The good news of Jesus is that foreignness is incorporated, part of the whole. It is not ignored as a nice anomaly. Furthermore, the salvation and restoration for this foreign Samaritan man were not in making him something he is not. Rather, he is healed and restored to be himself, restored to his family as a Samaritan. The salvation of Jesus provides mercy and healing and honors the differences of identity politics both then and now. The good news of this encounter is Jesus modeling an instruction for people to step across social biases, xenophobia, and bigotry. We are to share mercy with others without asking them to assimilate to our ways or meld in their differences into our pots. Who matters for Jesus should matter to us. What matters to Jesus should matter to us. And what does not matter to Jesus should not matter to us. In our time, we must ask, whom are we pushing out of the village into the dry cisterns of our world? Who are the leopards and the Samaritans of the 21st century? And how do we change to follow Jesus' model of inclusion? Amen.